Please welcome our next speaker, Tricia Sinclair, a Dynamics 365 customer engagement consultant. Today, she will be presenting OmniChannel, behind the scenes. Please stick around after Tricia's session for a live Q&A.
Hi everyone, welcome to my session for this year's Dynamics Con. This session is all about the Omni-Channel Engagement Hub. Last year we talked about, in my session, just an introduction to the Omni-Channel Engagement Hub and how many features it had and how amazing it was. And this year I wanted to take you behind the scenes and how to set up an Omni-Channel Engagement Hub trial and all the different things that goes into actually configuring, chats, etc. So who am I? My name's Tricia Sinclair. I am a customer service European lead from Avanan, and these are my details. If you'd like to ask any questions about OmniChannel, about my presentation, about customer service, or about Azure DevOps, which is the other thing I like to talk about, then please contact me on my Twitter, on LinkedIn, or please subscribe to my blog and you can read all about it. Now, during the course of this session, I will actually be here ready to take your answers, or actually your questions. I will be providing answers to your questions at the end of this presentation. So you're going to hopefully be, typing your questions away and interacting in the chat, depending on where that is, anywhere. But please do, use those fingers and ask questions. So this scenario that I'm going to talk about is actually a scenario near and dear to my heart. Obviously, we're in this situation now. We're all shopping online. And as we do, we often have to return things. So this is something that happened to me. I bought a makeup table. It was too big. I want to return it, but it was a nightmare to return. So in this scenario, I'm going to report a missing delivery using web chat, and then I'm going to investigate the issue using Dynamics customer service, and then I'm going to resolve the issue. And then as the agent's going to receive some coaching from their supervisor, and then they're going to be able to be even better. Of course, at the end of this all, this is basically where we're going to be testing maniacally, hoping for the very best, and all that. So let's see, in order to get to that scenario, what are the different steps that we need to do? Well, we need to start off with a base configuration, which is where we ensure that our users are set up, that we've got our queue set up. And then we have the chat configuration, which is where we configure the chat work stream and the widget. Of course, we're going to be talking about pre-chat questionnaires and also location, and talk about routing as well. And we're going to create some agent scripts, quick replies, slugs, and macros. Don't worry, these terms are not garden insects. These are actual omni-channel customer service terms, which you're going to be explaining and sharing how these are used and usable in this demonstration. We're going to then associate all of this with a session template and test by crossing our fingers and our toes and hoping for the very best. And then, of course, the piece de resistance, the voice channel configuration, which is going to be, in preview, I believe, in April, or they mentioned it in this year's release. It's going to be available sometime this year, but I do have a sneak peek for you where we're going to be showing you how we can configure that voice channel and how we can actually even create a new or request a new phone number from the Azure Communications Services. So let us start by talking about the base configuration. Now with the base configuration, of course, the first thing is we've got to ensure that our users have got the roles. Before we even ensure our users have roles, we've got to double back and ensure that our users have got, licenses. Yes, that's the correct term. We've got to ensure that our users have licenses. So when we ensure that our users have licenses, that's the digital messaging license or the omni-channel chat license, you might come in and you might actually see that, oh wait, I don't have any omni-channel users in my omni-channel list when you go into the users area of omni-channel. And that's because they haven't been granted their roles. There are several things that you need to do in order to configure a user, and so giving them their roles is one of them. There are four main roles that you need to give an omnichannel user. One is the base user role or the common data service role. Yes, I know that common data service has been renamed to Dataverse. However, the role is still called common data service role in some instances. Here you can see it's basic user, which I applaud, but you might actually find in some instance it's still called common data service. You also need to ensure that they have the customer service representative role or the customer service manager role, depending on who they actually are in the organization. Of course, managers will need an elevated access, an elevated role. So it's really up to you to kind of decide on the appropriate level of the roles. But the omni-channel agent or omni-channel supervisor role, the customer service supervisor role or the customer service manager role, the productivity tools administration role or the productivity tools user role, and the basic user role are the main roles that you need to grant your user in order for them to be able to use all the functionality available within omni-channel. Now, why the productivity tools role? Well, in OmniChannel, you have what's known as the productivity tools pane, which is where you see your knowledge articles and your smart assist, and even your suggested cases. Without this role, you're not going to be able to see that pane at all. So it's important that you assign this role to them. So the agents and the supervisors are able to see agent scripts and similar cases, etc. Now, in this instance, what I'm doing is I'm basically going back to assign the agent the same roles I assigned to the supervisor. But of course, the agent level of that. But whilst this is going on, you might actually wonder why I didn't start from setting up a trial. And that's because setting up a trial with Omni, it does take some time. That is one thing that it does take time. So I obviously created this beforehand, and then I just basically recorded this just to kind of be able to spend this time with you explaining what is happening as opposed to trying to sit down and quickly run through it. Now, you'll notice here after setting up the users that the capacity is set to nothing. There's no capacity. And that's because in the capacity, the list is going to, that's because in the capacity, sorry, you'll notice that the capacity is set to 0 or no. We need to ensure that it does have a capacity. So what we're going to do is we're just going to double back here. So what I mean by capacity is an arbitrary term that's used to relate to the amount that an agent can manage. Okay, so each agent has, for example, an amount of time that they have available. And if, for example, I have 100 capacity set, on the other level, on the other side of things, you also have a conversation channel, so a digital channel. For example, chat or SMS or WeChat, web chat, WeChat, WhatsApp, etc. They will also have capacity set for them as well. The capacity could be 5, 10, 15, 30. It indicates the level of complexity that it will take to deal with that type of conversation, right? So, for example, by default, your chat conversation will have a capacity of 30. So every single time I, as an agent, get a conversation assigned to me, it's going to take away 30 from my capacity, leaving me with 70, and it will continue until I get to 0, and then it will have no capacity left, which means I will not be assigned any more work because I am oversubscribed at that point. Okay, so I'm basically going to basically log in open each user record. Opening each user record will preset the capacity to 100. So as soon as you open the user record, the capacity will be set. Not only will the capacity be set, but the default presence will also be set as well. And this is by going to the OmniChannel tab on each user. An alternative is to both update the user using something like XRM Toolbox. Cool. Now, once I've actually set the default presence and the capacity, and I've assigned a user role to the users, then the next thing that I need to do is ensure that they have queues associated to them. So in order to ensure that I've got queues associated to them, so now I need to basically ensure that they have queues. Now, what queues are basically a grouping of, it's a way of grouping agents, okay? By default, when you create a trial, you have the entity queue and you have the messaging queue. Entity queues are where you manage, for example, your standard cases. Messaging queue is where you manage your digital messaging conversations like web chats or SMS, etc. Okay, so when you create a new queue, you might notice that you've got a queue type, which is entity. If you select entity, you'll be prompted for which entity is this queue related to, or queue type messaging basically will just ask you for the operating hours, and that's fine. The operating hours just indicates as to when is this queue, when are these agents available. If no agents are available, it basically will send a message to say that there are no agents available. It's very standard, but it's a really no-code way of managing your agents. So assigning these users to this queue basically means that any conversation related to order management will be assigned to any one of these agents. Okay, so it's really useful because there are different ways of routing. But in this instance, we're talking about manual routing. You do have other ways of routing, for example, skills-based routing, or even AI-enabled skills-based routing, where it learns about how you're routing and then will proactively route it that way for you. In this instance, we're only going to be talking about the just generate manual, selecting based on a condition, the routing to go through. Cool. So we're now going to save this, and once we've saved this, we're then going to go and assign the root tree. Yes, once we've saved this, we then need to go into and fix the what would you call an issue that has been noted. I think it was noted in a recent OmniChannel or change that happened on between now and I think it was January. So if you spun up a new trial recently, you might have come across this issue, or if you're going to spin up a trial now, you might come across this issue. Okay, so you'll see that what's happened is you might not get authenticated. You might get an error. That's because the security defaults, which was not previously enabled by default, is now being enabled by default. So just need to go into Azure, go into the Active Directory, go into Properties, and just turn off Enable Security Defaults. Once you've done that, you will be able to successfully authenticate OmniChannel. Cool. So let's go on to the chat configuration. Now for the chat configuration, we have what we call the chat workstream. Now the chat workstream is pretty much how you route your chats, how you manage your chats, and you need the chat workstream in order to create a chat widget. You need one workstream per widget. That's advisable. Now you'll notice here that the capacity is set to 30, as I talked about. The default capacity is 30, and these are the default work streams that are provided by OmniChannel. You'll notice also that there is nothing in the context variable area, and this is important because we're going to come back to this. We're going to now create a new chat widget. Now what I tend to do is depending on if I need authentication, if I need different chat widgets in different languages, I might create one per. Okay. Now, you also have the ability to select the different type of conversation, whether it be persistent or live. Live basically just means that every single time I, as a customer, initiate a new chat, it's going to start again from scratch. Otherwise, it's going to continue the previous conversation, right? There are other toggles that I can enable. So for example, the allowing of the customer to download their transcript, allowing them to email themselves their transcript. And if they do, then you need to basically ensure that you've got a template and also, you know, who it's from. Of course, you can enable them to send file attachments, or enable the agent to send file attachments. And of course, we're going to be talking about pre-chat conversation surveys. Okay, now if you want to do post-chat, then you can. This is tied into customer voice. Just have a customer voice survey ready, and that's going to pop up right after the chat has ended. And all you need to do is just link the two. We also have the design where you basically say how you want it to look. And of course, you can enable the voice video options, which all you're doing is just basically turning it on. There is no code required. You can go from chat straight to voice or video. In the location, of course, what you can do here is identify where the chat is being initiated from, whether it be Spain, in the UK, or wherever. This might be an opportunity for you to route it to someone who actually is in that appropriate area or time zone or language. Now, the next thing we're going to do is, after saving the chat widget, of course, is creating our pre-chat questions, because we couldn't earlier because, of course, we hadn't saved it. There are three types of, I think it's four actual types of question types. And I'm going to be creating three of them. But starting with name, which is extremely important, because name is something that's quite special to OmniChannel. Name allows us to automatically identify the contact or account that's actually initiating the chat. It's going to look for that name, and if it finds it, it's going to pop up. Okay. If it finds multiple, it will not. Now, the question type in terms of multiple option set rather is we can split that by a semicolon. But here I'm basically just asking why. What's the reason for the chat? And bear in mind the reason that we're actually creating this chat widget, which is I want to return some items. I'm going to have delivery and returns. I'm going to have product repairs, and also account inquiry, which is really typical reasons that you might actually call a retailer or you try to initiate contact with a retailer. You'll also notice that I'm saying that this is not mandatory. Now, if it's mandatory, it's obviously going to prevent you from continuing. But if it's not mandatory, you don't have to populate the question. Now, the last question that I'm going to ask is consent. Now, in this day and age of GDPR, you might actually want to ensure that the person or the customer is aware that their details will be stored in your system if they choose to continue initiating the chat. Now, if they choose to continue initiating the chat, then they would have to select yes to acknowledging this fact, and capture that. You can then capture that consent within that pre-chat question. Okay. Now, the question type for this is oddly enough called user consent, but what this is is really just a checkbox. So when you have this checkbox enabled, then you ensure that they select it. And when you select it, as I mentioned, capturing that consent will allow you to see that they did acknowledge that their details will be stored, in the system. Now, the reason I showed context variables earlier is because each time you create a pre-chat question, a context variable is also created. Now, that context variable can then be used for routing rules. It can also be used for other things such as notifications or in agent scripts, or to pre-populate records within the system. Context variables are really useful as well because you can create it manually. So for example, you might want to know how much amount, what's the amount that someone has in their shopping basket, if the chat is coming from your website, or if someone has other problems, or if someone has been authenticated. You might want to pass that information through, and you can do that through context variables, but that does require a little bit of coding. Now here what we're doing is we're just basically using the context variables to create routing rules. Okay, so you'll notice that this routing rule is associated to the default queue. Remember, we talked about the different queues and what the purposes of them are. So the first one we want to do is talk about, the first one we wanted to create was geared towards just ensuring that anything that is not associated to the delivery and returns chat reason is sent to the default queue, and anything that is geared towards the chat reason, delivery, and returns goes into the order management queue, where the order management team is going to take care of me because they will know exactly what needs to be done. Unlike my scenario where I was sent to 18 different departments and it's still in my closet because they can't figure out what to do. So once we've saved this, I will then be able to go back to the chat widget and take the chat widget snippet, because when we saved the chat widget, what happened was I got a chat widget snippet that you can then, of course, share with your design team, your website design team, if you have one. Or if you don't, like me, and you just want to test it, you can just use Notepad. And when you use Notepad, you can then pop the snippet in and just save it as an HTML page. And it will then allow you to just test the web chat button. Now, in this instance, what I want to do is test that first of all, that the pre-chat questions are being saved and being displayed. And in some instances, just bear in mind, it can take some time. Really, it should take 15 minutes for things to show up. But sometimes it comes through straight away. And I'm very happy because in this instance, it did, and I didn't have to wait long. So you can see here that we do have the pre-chat questions showing up. The second thing that I want to test is that I, as an agent, am able to log in. So I'm going to duplicate my tab, and then I'm going to go to the agent dashboard experience. When I go to the agent dashboard experience, what I need to do is just basically ensure that I, first of all, I'm getting the presence icon. If you're not getting the presence icon, you're not going to get any chat messages. So that's the way you can check if your agent has been set up correctly. If not, you might get like an error message at the top of this page, or no presence icon. If you're not getting a presence icon, there's a really valuable blog on my blog, or blog post on my blog, that explains how you can actually do that. And also, if you get to this point and you're not getting what you're expecting or what you're seeing here, I do have some standard troubleshooting techniques on my blog as well. Microsoft Docs also has really useful checks that you should use to see why this might be. So what's happening during this time is, remember I mentioned, it's checking the user roles. It's checking that you can authenticate to Active Directory. It's checking that you've got the license. It's checking that you've got your default presence and capacity. All that, then you're good to go. Now we're going to populate the pre-chat questions. And once we've populated the pre-chat questions, then you'll see here, it says an agent will be with you in a minute, which means I'm expecting a pop-up, and I think we have one here. Great. So we've got the visitor, and now what I'm checking is, has it, yep, we've got the pre-chat survey questions, and has it got the, has it routed? No, it has not routed it to the correct queue. So we're going to basically try this again, because remember, I did say sometimes it takes some time to filter through. So I am basically going to test this again. I'm going to close this down. We're going to literally do the same thing again, just to see if it actually is going to come through. So I'm going to close a copy of this chat, and this is where the persistent versus live chat comes in, because if it was persistent and I close it down, then the history of the chat would actually still be available, but I chose live chat, which means it's a new chat all the time. So here I'm basically just going to redo the exact same steps with regards to the pre-chat question. I've accepted it, and here, oh, it's not happened again. So 3 times a charm, 3rd time's a charm. I'm going to basically end this chat. I'm going to refresh, cross fingers, cross toes, because remember, I did say cross fingers, cross toes. I really want you all to cross it with me. Are you crossing? Cross it. Okay, let's try this one more time. So populate the name, select, and submit. Okay, now let's go in and let's check if we actually have this working now. You'll notice that it says visitor 3. Visitor 3 is because it doesn't find anyone that has that name. And yes, we have success. And that's because you all were crossing it with me. Great, thank you so much for that. Now let's end this and let's continue on with setting up OmniChannel. Okay, so let's start off with let's continue with productivity tools configuration. Now, in order to configure productivity tools, what we actually need to do is actually create what's known as a macro. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with Excel macros. And with Excel macros, the aim is to kind of automate or reduce the amount of work that you would typically need to do. And that's the same thing with macros. The purpose of a macro is to remove the effort that an agent would need to otherwise do. It has things like being able to automatically run a flow from by clicking on a button in the agent screen. It also has things like being able to automatically create a record that's pre-populated from information taken from the chat and the chat session. In this instance, what I'm going to be doing is a really simple use case. But the reason I'm doing this is because I want to explain the concept of a slug and actually show you how slugs are actually useful. And I'm going to be showing you that here as well as in the agent scripts area. So here I'm going to basically open a new entity or open a new form to create a record. Now there's a specific syntax that you need to have here, and it's basically where you populate the name of the entity, and it needs to be the schema name of the entity, and then you need to actually open up the advanced options if you want to pre-populate the form itself. If you have specific forms, then you also might want to specify the form ID. There is one bugbear I have about this functionality, and that is that this always hides everything I want to do. So bear with me. It is something. So you've also got, so you'll notice that the case origin code is a standard dynamics field, which is an option set. And you'll notice that what I'm doing is I'm populating it with the option set value. Okay. Now, unfortunately, there is no way to identify or pull in dynamically an option set to say if something is this, then that, without going and doing this via flow. So for the option sets, I'm just putting in the option set values. There is one thing that you need to do, know about, which is being able to populate the lookup values. Now, when you're actually setting a lookup value, if you are a developer, you might be aware of this. Citizen developers might be less so, but you might also be aware of this. And that is the syntax of the different fields that make up a lookup, which is the ID, the type, and the name. Those 3 fields must be populated on a macro in order for the option set to be set. So here you'll notice that I'm setting the customer record ID, and the syntax, what I mean by syntax, I mean the formula that's being used is the squirrely brackets with the customer record ID. And that's very specific to the OmniChannel. If you're doing this in the customer service workspace, there is actually a different formula that's needed. But don't worry, this can actually be found on the Microsoft Docs page. You'll notice here as well that the chat reason is also populated. And I mentioned here that the context variable, you will be able to utilize that to, with the context variable, you will be able to utilize that to pre-populate text and to set it in notifications. You know, when the customer is coming through as a conversation. These are the different ways in which you can use it with just that type of syntax. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take that macro, because macros can be utilized in two ways. One, in an agent script, and two, in Smart Assist. Those are the two ways in which a macro can be utilized. Smart Assist is actually a bit trickier, and we're not going to go into that because that does require code. We're going to be talking about agent scripts. So for agent script, I'm going to create two standard agent scripts. One is your welcome script to welcome the customer, and this agent script is going to be used by the agent. So there are three types of script steps, if you call it that. One which is text, one which is script, one which is macro. Action type, that's it. So I'm going to be showing you three of them and how it can be configured. We're going to start off with text, and this is basically where we're just going to specify or state or tell the agent, introduce yourself using quick reply, which is a way of automating or reducing it's a way of making it easier to interact with your agent. So here we're just going to basically populate the welcome script. Okay. Now, in the interests of time, because really what I would love to show is the voice channel, I'm actually going to skip ahead. I do have this on my blog, which is a shameless plug, because there's so much to do here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to skip ahead slightly. You'll notice here that we've got the welcome script and the validate script, and what I did was I actually went through and I put it in the sessions tab. Now, when I put it in the sessions tab, what this basically means is that anytime I start up a new chat session, I will be able to automatically get that chat session show up. Okay, so let me show you this in test. So I will show you the test in just a second. What I want to do is I want to go through and show you the voice channel configuration before I double back and I show you the test. Now, in the voice channel configuration, you might not be aware that this is available, but if you are, have a look at my blog. It shows the actual functionality in flight. But right now, what we're looking at is the new experience of the OmniChannel Admin Center. It took us around 33 minutes to just create the work stream and the chat widget and the routing, etc. However, it has been reformulated for you to just click that button where it says set up chat demo, and it basically will go and create everything for you in less than 5 minutes, which is pretty good. And this applies for not only the chat demo, but also for the voice demo as well. Okay, so perfect. So here you can actually see, just by clicking on that, it's basically set up the work stream. It's acquired a phone number, it sets up the voice channel for us, and it sets up the queues, and it's done the routing. So you don't really need to do much. Then you open the agent experience and you make a call and you're testing the voice. That is less than 5 minutes. Okay, now if we actually look at the experience of even just manually acquiring a phone number, and the reason I want to do this is because it is superbly less effort than it would typically take, even if you did not have OmniChannel. If you had, so for example, a separate ISV, it would still take more time than doing this. So you'll now have, this is the new admin experience, and everything will be coming into this, and you will actually be seeing this in April. Okay, so you'll see the phone numbers if you are in the preview here, and you'll be able to see the chat demo, which with all the different step-by-step instructions as to how to get there. It's just much more seamless. Okay, now when we actually go into creating the what do you call it, the phone numbers, which is where I want to go to. The phone numbers are actually being acquired by Azure Communication Services, ACS, and it's only available right now in the US. Unfortunately, it will be coming to Europe this year, I've been told, which is 2021. But right now, it is only available in the US. Now, I've already exceeded the number of numbers I can have, and I don't really want to delete them. So I'm just going to be showing you where you go to add the number, but I'm not going to be adding a number. So here you can actually see that I can select the country. I'll be able to select the type, whether it be a toll-free or just a normal number. And then I'll be able to specify if it's bi-directional or one way, or if it's even an SMS number as well. Once that's done, the phone number is acquired, and I can then use it in my standard web work streams. It's literally as simple as that from within this area. Okay, so I want to do one thing. If you bear with me, I am going to go and just grab my test, and it will not take me 2 minutes. This might be outside of this as well, by the way. Oh, by the way, also here you can actually see that there is a really cool bot. So it's really super easy to get the bot hooked up to your voice channel, but also to your chat channel just from within here, which is so much easier. So now what I'm doing is I'm doing the actual test. Now, bear in mind, we talked about the name and how the name was special. Now, Tricia Sinclair is the actual contact that actually sits in the database, not Tricia, which we were using before, which is why it was always visitor. Now, you'll notice that I go through and Tricia Sinclair is actually initiating the chat. Great. As an agent, I will accept that chat. Now, we already confirmed that it's routing through to the correct queue. Great. But now you'll see that we also have agent scripts. Perfect. That works. So far, so good. You'll see the conversation panel in the middle. Awesome. Let's select the correct script, which is the welcome script. We're going to greet the customer with quick reply. Quick replies are actually pre-populated in the system. You can add your own custom ones as a system, but also as an agent as well. They can create their own quick replies. Now, I can then interact with the agent as the customer. And the reason I'm doing this is because I also want to show that sentiment analysis is pretty standard. There isn't anything that you actually need to do. It comes out of the box, and you don't actually need to enable it unless you want the supervisor to be notified of negative sentiment. And in that case, then yes, you do need to flick the button for that, which we did not do. Now that we've introduced ourselves, then let's go and validate the customer. Now, bear in mind, I did not show this, I apologize, but this is where we use slugs to identify or pull information in from Dataverse. So we know the contact, which means that we have information about the contact. We have information about, if we hooked it up to case, we would have information about the case. So we can use what's known as slugs to go out and pull that data in and actually personalize the agent script. So as they're going through and actually saying things, it's actually more personal to that customer. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're then going to go back to the welcome script. And when we go back to the welcome script, we're going to do the third thing, which is to use the macro. Now, bear in mind, the macro that we used was to create the contact, or create the case. And the case is going to be pre-populated with details taken from the case record. So the case form is going to be pre-populated with the details that we're taking from the conversation that we're having. So that is, okay, here, for some reason, saying slightly positive, it just doesn't understand sarcasm very clearly. So we're going to click on welcome script, and we're going to basically click on the case Now, this is going to basically open up in the application tab area the case form that's going to be pre-populated. You'll see that there was a problem. One thing that did not work, which is the case title, and that's fine. I will fix that later. But you'll see the customer is pre-populated, and that is great. So all I need to now do is press save after populating the case title and close this chat, and that will be your test. Just 1 second, we'll do that. Save, yay, awesome. Okay, let's close this, and that's it. Okay, great. So that is it for this presentation today. Now, guys, I just basically want to say thank you so much for joining this session. Bear in mind, I am still here. Hopefully you've been chatting away and actually asking questions, and I am super ready to get right into it and answer those questions for you right now, especially if it's about this voice situation that we have right here. So thank you so much, and I'll see you down in the chat. Hi. Awesome. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining my session. We've got Chris, who's going to be helping me moderate the session, and he's going to be asking me all the questions that you've got in the chat so I can focus and dedicate my brain to answering them.
I don't think you need to focus too much. You are a bit of a legend. Yeah, anyway, how's it going? I hope you're good. Right, let's get right into it. So I'm taking a look at what's going on in the chat. Now, Tricia, first of all, that was a really great session. Really appreciate it. One of the first things was around the trial environments. I mean, you either did it like really quickly, or how do you get started with this stuff? Like, what do you do?
Basically, to spin up an omni-channel trial environment at the moment, it is quite a feat. You have to actually, of course, go to trials.dynamics.com, but you kind of got to do it twice, because the first time it doesn't actually give you the omni-channel hub that you need. So I didn't actually go through that. What I did was I referred you to my blog, where I actually have a video showcasing that experience. Now, what I then proceeded to do is actually start from once you've actually got that environment, because that's actually the main thing. A lot of people are actually okay getting to that point where you actually have the trial, but they don't know how to set it up. So what I did was focus on how to actually set it up from that bit. But if you're interested in actually how to create the trial, go to my blog.
Awesome. Okay, so great point. And the second thing I wanted to ask is that when you spin up a trial, do you have to create a whole brand new instance of Dynamics 365, or can you attach it to the one you've currently got?
Depends. If you've already got a trial where you might have had OmniChannel before, then probably not. But if you just have it where you've got customers, I mean, you can't have a trial on a trial unless it's a totally new person, in which case you can. But if you already have customer service, then yeah, you can just basically add OmniChannel on as a trial to that existing environment.
Awesomeness. Okay, so there's a great question that's come in, and this is from Rob. And the question is, what is the best place to look for a 101 crash course on OmniChannel for those that are brand new to it?
Interesting. You know, Rob, there actually isn't one, but there are so many blogs, and what the blogs are actually doing is they are systematically going through the setup process of OmniChannel. I know this because I write such a blog. So does Neil Parkhurst, and so does EY Kalman. So if you actually go to any one of those blogs, you will actually have a systematic idea of how to piece the things together. And of course, we can't forget about the docs. I mean, yes, sometimes the docs might not have a lot of information, but I do know that the docs for OmniChannel, they are quite detailed, and they are actively working on improving them. So if you actually use the docs and use the blogs for now, that will work. Also, I believe that Microsoft are putting in an Omni-Channel in a day, which I think is coming up next week. And I think it might actually be oversubscribed already, but hopefully they'll run it again.
Omni-channel in a day. So that's just literally like more room for another well-constructed acronym, right? So we've got our pal from across the seas, Dion, and obviously she's just making a fat noise in the chat. So respect. And Dion is saying, isn't there also an ability to allow video calling and screen sharing? Can you talk more about that, please?
Yeah. So basically, like voice and video, there's so many things around this. Right now, from chat, with a check of a button, you can actually enable chat to voice or chat to video. And this doesn't require any additional install from the customer side or even your side, because it actually uses just the web interface to actually make that call. So that's really valuable, especially in the instances where you might actually want to, first of all, help someone, allow them to see, to show you what they might be talking about, or you want to actually have interaction, face-to-face interaction with them. So that's useful. But there, of course, are other things coming up the line. For example, being able to interact with remote assist. That's also, I think, available now, or it actually is going to be coming. So there are different ways. Right now, the main one is with that checkbox, enabling voice video.
Cool. Okay, so first of all, I'm trying to figure out how many times you said slugs in your presentation, but I'm not going to ask. The second thing is from Dion again. With slugs, where can you pull data from?
Good question, Dion. Thank you very much for asking these lovely questions in the chat. Okay, so where you can pull slugs data from for slugs is when you actually interact with Omni. So you'll notice that I, first of all, did pre-chat. Of course, you can also do Power Virtual Agents. And of course, you've got Dataverse. So every single time you interact with an external system coming into Omni, what you're actually passing through are context variables. These context variables are effectively where those slugs are coming from. A slug is effectively just a placeholder. And that placeholder is populated with the context variables that you've got all around the system, including Dataverse information.
Epic. Okay, and I just love the fact that they managed to tie like mollusks into something, which is really great. So next one is my favorite question of all time, licensing, big question mark. Could you explain?
I know this was coming. I'm prepped. I'm ready. Hit me.
Yeah. So how was OmniChannel licensed, and is it included with your customer service license?
Okay, so OmniChannel itself is licensed on top of Customer Service Enterprise. So of course you've got Customer Service Professional and you've got Customer Service Enterprise. First of all, you need to start with Customer Service Enterprise. Once you've started with Customer Service Enterprise, you can then go on top of that with a chat-only license if you just need chat. Now, chat, I believe, is £45. And then you've got the add-on, which is digital messaging, which is pretty much all of the channels. And that's like an additional 10 quid on top of chat.
All right. And I know you recently did a session. Now I'm freeballing because we don't actually have that many more questions, but I know you recently did a session on, what did you call it? The Power Platform Love Affair. So does OmniChannel integrate into Tinder?
I don't think OmniChannel, I don't think I'd want to integrate OmniChannel into Tinder, to be fair. But I'm sure there's a question about voice. So
yeah. Could you tell us a bit more about the voice channel, how it works, where it comes from?
Yes, this is like my favorite feature. So the voice channel, as you saw, the voice channel is actually fairly new. It's something that is going to be coming out in the second half of the year. It is actually using Azure Communication Services, which is actually in public preview right now, so you can play with it. And what it does, once it goes live, it's going to offer both inbound and outbound calling capabilities to OmniChannel. So think about that. That's great, isn't it? And you saw how quick it was to set up.
Yeah, it's incredible. I've actually, the technology that's coming out with OmniChannel is just unbelievable.
I know, isn't it? By the way, the experience of the first one experience that you saw there, that's not only coming for voice, but that's also there, as you saw, for chat as well. So the 30 odd minutes that it took me to set up is basically going to be reduced down to what, 5 minutes with that check of a button. So yeah, that's great news for me, and I think for everybody else.
That's incredible. So Tricia, we've always spoken about like the different channels for OmniChannel. What else? I mean, where is Microsoft going with this? Are we looking at like WhatsApp? I mean, where Microsoft going with the number of channels you can link up to?
So you've already got WhatsApp, actually. So WhatsApp is the channel that you can have. You can have, of course, WeChat, Line, so many other channels are there. You can also have your custom channel. So if there's a channel, for example, Instagram, which is something that a lot of customers ask us to integrate with, that's also possible, but it's not, the Instagram channel is not a standard first party channel, but you can actually incorporate it using the custom channel and also even Alexa. So these are ideas of channels that are not there as part of OmniChannel, but through the custom channel capability and channel integration framework V2, they can actually be created and incorporated and actually has much similar functionality than the first party channels.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. And just from when you look at this kind of functionality and you look at a full-fledged telephony solution with a VIA and all this crazy routing, are we kind of at that level yet? I mean, is that where we're going with this?
I think that's where they're going with it. So right now you have what's known as AI-enabled skills-based routing, right? So that's like the next port of routing. So you've already got your standard routing, you've got your skills-based routing, now you've got AI-enabled routing. And then on top of that, you've got like the voice type of routing, as you mentioned, with Avaya and Genesis, etc. So you can actually already route the same way that you would route with them. So for example, least busy, etc. That's already possible. And that's pretty much where they're going to be going. Of course, we want to be a contender within the voice space as well.
Incredible. Okay, so we're down to the last little bit. So the questions in the chat are done as far as I can see. If anyone has anything else, now's the right time to add it into the chat. But
don't make it weird. Don't make it weird.
What I'd like to ask is what's next? What do you think's on the horizon?
That's a hard question. What is next?
Integration to Tinder.
We're not. No, there is no integration to Tinder. Just no. Let's just leave that with the Power Platform, and OmniChannel will remain pure.
There is one other. Dion's just posted another question. Can you talk about monitoring for supervisors?
Yeah. So it's great that supervisors are able to monitor. Actually, I know where we could actually definitely go for the next time as well, though. But there are different ways in which, of course, you can monitor. So first of all, by listening out. So I showed the sentiment analysis and how I talked about how the supervisor can actually listen out or actually see a notification when things are not going great. If it goes to like a negative or slightly negative, they can get a notification, click on it, it will take them to the chat or the conversation rather, so they can actually support the agent and then opt in to join if they needed to. But the other thing as well, which I find absolutely great, which is actually a part of the voice channel and how the supervisors can coach their agents. It's actually a mixture of voice, but also customer service insights. So with customer service insights, I'm not sure if a lot of people are aware that customer service insights is actually something that you get with customer service enterprise. So if you've got customer service enterprise, having something that is giving you AI-enabled KPIs just out of the box with a lot of standard metrics are typically used in customer service, that's great. But then on top of that, you've also got what's known as call intelligence. Now you can incorporate call intelligence with other, third-party channels if you wanted to by pushing the information in. But with voice, it's standard. So now you actually have call transcripts, the call recording, and then you can actually use this to then coach your agents to get them better, because of course you've got all the information as to how to actually, allow them to improve.
Awesome. Okay, so any final comments? I think we've pretty much hit it all on the head. I mean, there's a lot of people in the chat that have given you thumbs up, and everyone seems to be quite well engaged. So is there any last final words before we wrap this up?
Yes, thank you so much to DynamicsCon, to the sponsors for actually sponsoring the event. Thanks to you to actually moderating and not making it super weird. And thanks for everyone for coming to my session. Like, it's been really appreciated. As you saw, it was like not fully doable in 45 minutes, but I think we got a lot of it done. Right. And if that we didn't have to redo that thing 3 times, then maybe it would have been like fully there. I think we almost did it. Yay.
Well, you smashed it. And a big thanks to everyone. And thank you, Tricia. You're awesome as always.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.